Welcome to the Domestic Supply Chain Summit. Today we are joined by Steve Blough, co-founder and chief innovation officer at Mercury. Thank you so much for joining us today, Steve.
Great to be here, Mary. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to get into things today. It's the end of the year, it's December. It's time to really take that overall big picture look at the supply chain. But before we get too far into that, let's get some background on you and kind of how you started Mercury.
Yeah, well, at the time, I was actually working at IBM and I built a TMS for IBM and they sold it externally. But my partner and I decided it was a great time to bring TMS to the internet, right? And this was back in 2000, so it's a while ago. But we were one of the first really SaaS solutions out there in the market for transportation. Seems sort of commonplace these days, but then it wasn't. And of course, we fought a lot of those kind of battles of, hey, can we put this stuff in the cloud? My company won't let me, those type of things. But we started basically doing a very organic kind of growth, 5, 6 customers a year. And now, 24 years later, we have over 500 customers worldwide. And we recently just sold to Corber Supply Chain Services, a German-based company, and excited to be more now supply chain focused than just transportation focused.
That has to be really exciting to kind of see something go from, can we even put it on the cloud? Can we do all of this different tech innovation to now how far we've come? And then not only doing that, but, having another company recognize that value and say, yeah, we would like to bring you guys on board for to help our system as well.
Yeah, and it's neat to start to get like the order management, the warehouse management, everything kind of combined. So when you think about visibility now, right, it's not just, hey, where's my freight? Right? It's like where are these things across the whole supply chain? And it's interesting because a lot of those inflection points, whether it's in a warehouse or still in the order system, you can adjust things and still make delivery dates where once it's in a truck or on an ocean vessel, it's not much you're going to do to change stuff, right? So
Yeah, it turns out ocean vessels can't really stop and then like switch out a load really quick.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's a little tricky. So one of the things that we were gonna get into today is kind of that ever-present looming AI, but it's actually a lot, it's not as scary as at least I don't think it's as scary as a lot of people think it is. And especially when you're kind of going into the applications of it. So uh we see it all the time. Personally, one of my favorite potential applications for it is that data analytics side of things, because it takes all of that analysis and all of that. Okay, let me set up 700 macros in Excel and then walk away from my computer for 2 hours and hope I get the right result that I'm looking for. And so I think it really kind of takes that and removes that, where you don't have to just walk away from your computer for 2 hours and let it chug along. It just makes it as simple as a snap. Do you guys see that being like a huge trend in the industry?
It is. But what's really interesting to me is you start to see the struggle in our industry, at least, the difference between just reporting, that one Excel spreadsheet maybe, versus getting the true analytics, the trends, the things that make a difference, and some of the, you know, I would call it sort of the strategy steering wisdom that comes out of those type of things, right? So, it's hard talking to someone from Sonar about analytics, right? I mean, you guys are certainly some of the leading folks in our industry, at least, and taking folks and guiding folks, right? Providing that leadership. But, I mean, take something you guys do quite well, like rating analytics, right? Where, you're looking at a lane. Well, in our world, I'll often get a question, and I'm kind of generalizing. Right? I mean, it's an 80-20 kind of thing where 20% of the people actually know what analytics are, but 80% still are stuck in this reporting sort of paradigm, if you will. But they'll come in and say, hey, I want to see, my rates on my lane last week by carrier. Well, that's not that that's not interesting, but think about like what you guys do. I mean, whether it's, year over year, week over week, month over month, whatever it is, you start to show those trends. And then you start to say, look, capacity stronger, or it's favoring shippers, it's favoring carriers. I mean, these are the things that provide that wisdom to help you make the right decision on what I should be paying. I also think about, when we look at it with our customers, they say, "Look, tell me what my rates are." But then they say, "Well, that's great, but where does that fall with other Mercury Gate customers? Or where does that fall with industry customers like from Sonar?" So you have this sort of, I call it like a three-tier view of that analytics, if you will, of, the customer and MG customers and then the Sonar or the industry customers, right? That really is interesting to folks and needed for that wisdom, because otherwise you don't know if what you paid last week is what's going on in the market or you're an anomaly in that market, right?
Yeah, and I think that's something that I think everyone's kind of looking for is, okay, like, just kind of that pulse check of, "Okay, this is what I have. Am I on base? Am I a mile down the street? Or somehow do I have the best deal that I'm sitting there going, 'Okay, how did this happen?'" Because you wanna know that feedback is incredibly important because it just literally lets you know where you stand, and, I mean, I can't shout enough about analytics and seeing trends and other things like that, but that's also just, the analyst in me, but no, because like we were talking about, it's you could have the nicest, the slickest, cool technology and all of this different machine learning, AI, all these different things, but if you don't have someone to sit there and, interpret that data and kind of make a recommendation or catch a trend or others things like that, like, you just paid a lot of money for something that makes really pretty looking reports.
Well, and that's a great point. So one of the things that's kind of exciting, and you guys do another good job of this, but I'm seeing it more and more is just the presenting that type of information in more natural language kind of format, not just the nice charts and graphs, but literally text describing what the analytics are, right, and giving that to somebody to be able to consume in a logical way, as well as maybe even the other side of it, being able to use natural language to get that data or those analytics out of the data, right? And say describing the problem or describing what you're looking for, and then AI or whatever building the right stuff for you, so you're not stuck building 50 Excel spreadsheets now and then figuring out how to combine it and all that type of stuff, right?
Oh, building 50 Excel spreadsheets just takes me back to some bad, bad times
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
where, like, you have like, a macro off, like, just bouncing between 3 of them, and you're like, "It should work, it's fine."
Yeah, yeah, then, it's like just but again, trying to get that out to somebody that understands it, especially when you look at, you know, a lot of this falls to, and again, it's not faulting someone, but, upper management has a request. I wanna see, what our freight spend is. Well, again, interesting data, but not necessarily providing the wisdom of, well, how can I impact what I have, or how do I change where my trajectory is, my trends are, that kind of thing. And it's really interesting too when you think of technologists. Every time I bring technology guys into Mercury to look at our data, the first thing they want to do is start, let's take your 3 petabytes of data and load it in, a data lake. It's like, why? I mean, I got 25-year-old data. I don't need that in a data lake, right? Or maybe I do, but you get the idea. What's the use case or the end result of what we're trying to struggle with, right?
Yeah, and I think that just kind of ultimately, I think that's what a lot of people get caught up in is, "Oh, I have all this data, I have all this data," but at the end of the day, what are you trying to accomplish with it? What is the goal of it? Because if you're just churning through and chugging through data, that's great, but what are you gonna do with it? What's the point of, going through everything? So I think making sure you have that goal in mind is really important. Um
It
but
is.
speaking of data and everything like that, like, the best way to make decisions sometimes is to look at some of that historical data and everything like that, but, I mean, I personally found a lot back when I was in pricing that a lot of shippers and customers don't have the best data, so kind of how do you even know if you do have good data or if it's missing if it has giant holes missing in it?
And it's not even whole sometimes, right? I think of, again, think of my own customers. A lot of times you have companies that have acquired companies, right? And now they've got 3, 4, 5 ERP systems. They have the same location in that ERP system, 3, 4, 5 different ways or different location codes or however you want to think of that. So now I've got this, it's decent data coming in, but now I've got one location depicted in 5 ways, right? And so, that's where, the data curation side of things starts to come into play. Like, how do you start to look at this data and get this homogeneous look at a location, for instance? I'm just picking an easy example, but, there's more complex ones, of course, out there, right? And, I heard a guy the other day on TV, he was talking about AI. And it was a gentleman from the Center for Humane Technology, pretty grandiose kind of name, but I think he made some great points. And he said if you look at like the industrial age, right, a barrel of oil replaced 25,000 man hours of labor. Well, when you start to look at the age of AI, now you're not looking at physical labor. Now you're looking at cognitive labor, right? And you can take years of cognitive layer with AI and boil it down to, hours, days, or weeks of AI labor, right? So it's not like you're going to necessarily replace all these people. You're just going to augment it or at least compress the time. I mean, things go fast enough. We were just talking about, we're at the end of the year here and another, holiday season, you get the idea. And it just time goes so fast. Well, now computers and AI are starting to make it even quicker. So it's really interesting to see that kinda change, but at the base of all this, the people that are gonna win are the people that have good data, and it's not necessarily that they have bad data, they just need that data to be able to, get it common, if you will, across their different and the example I use, different, ERP systems or whatever, right?
I've long since said that like AI might not be coming to replace everybody, but more so someone who knows how to effectively use AI is coming in because the whole point is you don't want to have people working on those mundane, those repetitive tasks. You want them, working those exceptions, finding the problems, working through some of that. And I think that's a better use of, that cognitive power and lightening the load where that way you can free up people to do other things that are more important or maybe harder to automate, you know?
Absolutely, and the other interesting thing is getting things in the right, language, I'll call it for lack of a better description. But in our world would be maybe my world would be transportation language or logistics language, right? It is a language of its own kind of vocabulary, and terms mean different things to people. So it's important that all the right terminology is used, and that's one of the areas AI can really help in. Is once it learns that I said natural language before, but it's really the logistics language, right? Once it learns that and can relate things to you in that, it gives people the time, I like to say, time to pause and use wisdom to make decisions, right? Instead of just reacting and going, they can actually now, like to your point, instead of spending hours and hours of cognitive time, they can spend their cognitive time to impart wisdom, right? And use that.
100%. I think that is kind of what I see in the more immediate future of, being able to work hand in hand with those tools. Steve, before we wrap up, what's your biggest piece of advice for those that are looking to, clean up their data and really improve their analytics?
Well, I would, really I think you touched on it as well. It really is what is the use case of the analytics I'm trying to solve, right? Like there's just so much data out there, and making sure then once you have that use case that your data matches that use case. I was thinking the other day, one of the things I think is going to be transformational in our space is the ability to, log problems, through a bot, be able to look for patterns and issues, develop those type of analytics now to go out and recommend ways to solve problems. So this applications become self-healing. You see that on the back end today, but I see it more on the front end of the application itself. And even so far as think about implementations of applications, being able to, in a natural language, say, hey, I want to do uh, you know, temperature controlled pharma kind of moves. Well, for, applications now where workflow, business rules, all those things are built into the application infrastructure, the AI tool can actually generate those and you get into generative AI to create the right software setup, right? So it's really fascinating to be in this world now, I think. And I think where it's going in the next few years, will change how software is implemented and how software is sold.
Yeah, it's definitely, the technology glow up that we've all desperately needed.
Yeah.
So, if anyone wants to reach out to you outside of the summit, where can they find you?
My email is techman@mercurygate.com, and happy to chat to anyone. Look forward to hearing from folks and love to get some of their thoughts on where they think things are heading as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, and stay tuned for the rest of the summit. We have a bunch of amazing content coming your way.